Would you like to get updated with the latest episode of AnimeKouhai Tensura spoiler series? It's episode number 312, volume 13, chapter 4, part 16, entitled, Laplace survives a close call after running into Ramiris' staff. Support the channel and you will have access to 3 episodes per week. Check out her Patreon page if you get a chance.
I wanted to get information on Imperial territory as well, but I had to be satisfied with the military border for now. A lot of soldiers gathered there to guard the area around the base. That place was always busy.
It doesn't look like there's going to be any movement today.
I remarked.
Yeah.
Benimaru replied.
By the way, this magic is really nifty, isn't it? It's what you've been working on recently, right, Rimuru-sama?
Since we were the only people here today, Benimaru engaged in a casual tone. I liked this more relaxed side of him. Unfortunately, as soon as someone else was around, he would go back to his rigid self. Well, except with Soe and Diablo. I wanted to cherish the camaraderie we had, so every once in a while, I'd take the 3 of them to Ingracia for a night out and crack open a cold one with the boys.
That's right.
Diablo jumped in.
The greatness of this magic begins with its unconventional conception and out-of-the-box thinking. The cost to performance is incredible. Not to mention its convenience, and the complexity of the calculations needed for it to activate are as fine as a beautiful work of art. So,
stop.
I shouted.
Hold it right there. If you can't stop gushing over it, just do it somewhere I can't hear you, okay?
This was what happened when I got careless. Diablo's sudden gushing was something I just didn't want to deal with. This magic was indeed great, but the only reason I could do it was because I had Raphael-san. It was a bit awkward to hear such praise because I couldn't take full credit for it.
Yeah, Diablo. If you don't pull yourself together a bit, you'll bother Rimuru-sama.
That's ridiculous. What are you saying, Benimaru? That's not true, right, Rimuru-sama?
No, Benimaru is right. You're overreacting too much. It's always wonderful Rimuru this, incredible Rimuru that, it's totally overblown.
This was the perfect time to properly call Diablo out on it. He deflated like a punctured balloon, utterly devastated. It wasn't anything serious, though, just him being dramatic. When I heard that Diablo was a powerful demon or something called primordial, I didn't know what to do about it. But if you really thought about it, he was a weirdo from the start. He even made a fool out of Guy, so you just make a fool of yourself if you took him seriously. I had realized that, so I wanted to be alert.
How incredible of Rimuru-sama. Even your mere words inflicted excruciating mental damage to my soul.
Didn't I just tell you to stop it?
Right? This guy was incapable of self-reflection. Having a stern word with him was just fine. Our heartwarming conversation was interrupted by a sudden report.
Rimuru, there has been a direct spatial transfer to the labyrinth. This feedback, it came from the old-timer that recently became our ally.
Understood. I'll go to the 70th floor right away.
When I stood up, Benimaru and Diablo realized that something was up. I was impressed at how quick they were to react, so I let them know what was happening.
Seems like that Gadra's back, but something's wrong. Let's go check it out.
Understood. I will remain here as a guard.
Then I will escort Rimuru-sama.
I'll rely on you.
During important times like this, I could count on Diablo. If only he were always like this, then. Nope, never mind. Diablo was brilliant, but he seemed like 2 entirely different people at times. On that somber note, we headed to the room we had assigned to Gadra. As expected, we found him right there. Well, now I didn't have to worry about him because he was right in front of me, alive and well.
Oh dear. I could already see the other side.
Gadra murmured, all the while still looking as spry as ever. The only people here, other than me and Diablo, were Adalman and the others. Ramiris and Veldora got here late but got back to work once they found out that Gadra was safe and sound.
So, what happened?
Well, during the Imperial Conference, I suggested that we do not go to war, as Rimuru-sama ordered. In spite of this, they are intent on moving forward. I already expected that, so I wanted to make a direct appeal to His Imperial Majesty Rudra as my last service to him.
And then he said he requested to meet with the Emperor, which was accepted. Their meeting was meant to take place today. Gadra entered the Emperor's castle, only to be stabbed by someone. It had all gone down just moments ago, not even 10 minutes had passed. It would be dumb to ask him if he was okay.
Oh right, we gave you the resurrection bracelet.
Yes sir. Ramiris-sama's power is marvelous. This bracelet saved my life. I was expecting something like this would happen, so I prepared a teleportation spell in advance.
Seeing him safe now, I figured that might indeed be the case. That was quite the clever idea. If you were to return to the labyrinth, no matter how injured you were, or how close you were to dying, the resurrection bracelet would bring you back to life. Gadra's return and resurrection reaffirmed how useful Ramiris's power truly was. Even so, it was owed in part to Gadra's finesse to set up magic in advance. It seemed like he also passed this technique on to Raisin. I'd have to try this myself some other time. In my case, I had thought acceleration, so if I combined it with that, I might be able to create more amazing magic.
So, who attacked you?
I didn't think there were that many people capable of beating Gadra, even in my country. He was always on guard, with thorough defensive magic, so I didn't think he would be slow to react even if taken by surprise.
The thing is, I was attacked without detecting the presence of the culprit, robbing me of my chance to confirm the identity. I do have an idea about who it was, but it's very hard to believe.
Gadra turned and showed us his back, where we could see a gash in his robes. His wounds were healed, but his equipment was not restored. His robes had traces of corrosion on it, which made it clear that it wasn't your average physical attack.
Stabbed in the heart from your back, huh?
The assailant even managed to break through the defensive magic. It looks like they have someone with an intriguing technique.
Even Diablo was impressed. That was how you could tell this opponent was not one to be underestimated. There was likely someone powerful enough to kill me in the Empire. Maybe he was the one who stabbed Gadra, but it was better to assume that there were still others. Gadra himself wasn't certain about his attacker's identity. He wanted to look further into it, so I decided to leave it to him. He didn't seem to be lying because he looked seriously confused. It may still be too early to trust him, but I'm not one to burn a bridge like that.
Well, I'm glad that you're safe. This just shows us that the Empire is strong. We must double our efforts to be careful in the future.
Rimuru-sama is right.
Diablo added.
We can't get any new information now, even if we pushed our luck further than this.
We seem to be on the same page. For now, we should be content with the information Gadra had obtained, nearly paying the ultimate price for it. With that in mind, I decided to question him a little further and thanked him for his troubles. From Gadra's story, the Empire was headed for war. They wouldn't publicly declare war against another country, though. To them, their emperor was the absolute authority, so they didn't acknowledge the existence of other countries. However, that was just a facade. In fact, they somehow had diplomatic ties with the Dwarven Kingdom, and had not interfered in their governance. When the Empire invaded other countries, they always came fully prepared. That was why instead of a declaration of war, they would announce a recommendation to surrender. They would only do it once. If the country surrendered, then great. If they didn't, then war would come. The Empire would give no mercy. What a condescending and prideful country. You can't become friends with other countries if you're that annoying, you know? Worrying about that was useless, since the Empire never participated in any international affairs anyway. That's why they didn't ratify the Western States Council's international laws, so there was no use arguing when they started a war, as they were not bound by these laws. Agreements after defeat, handling of prisoners of war, a number of prohibitions in wartime. Without any of those arrangements, the Western nations were very much afraid of the Empire. That was, indeed, scary. At worst, they would justify the slaughter of civilians. That meant that if we were to lose the war to the Empire, we would lose everything. And maybe, the word reparations wouldn't even come into play. Everything would belong to the Empire, leaving the losing country with nothing, not even a single right, after unconditional surrender. In order to be able to negotiate with the Empire, it would have to end in at least a draw. Then, my side wouldn't have to go nice on them. All we had to do was to settle this once and for all and cut off the root of the problem. Now that we were certain about the Empire's movements, we also switched to war mode. First of all, I set up a joint operation headquarters in the control room. I did it on a whim. Nevertheless, something like this was important. Benimaru and Soe would always be on standby here. Soe still stationed his clones in several places, so we didn't have to rely entirely on my Argos for reconnaissance. With Moss's help, we could get information with a high degree of accuracy. At this point, our advantage was considerable. To put it bluntly, when it came to warfare in this world, the real action only started once the opposing armies clashed. We were trying to gather intel on the enemy's troops with the use of scouts and long-range magic, but in this world, it was common practice to only do so when the clash was imminent. The concept of information warfare existed here, but no country's military conducted surveillance of enemy forces as thoroughly as ours. That's what Hinata and Gadra told me, so it's not me being presumptuous, okay? It's a hard fact.
This footage is from the sky?
Gadra asked. Diablo laughed.
This is created through Rimuru-sama's magic. It only uses a small amount of magicules, and the reaction occurs outside the atmosphere. Only few could sense this magic reaction, such as those with danger precognition skills like Ultra Instinct.
Indeed. I've always been confident in my ability to sense magic. but this magic appears too natural for me to think it was being controlled by someone.
Of course, even an archdemon, who may excel in magic but lacks experience, wouldn't be able to appreciate this masterpiece. How brilliant, wouldn't you agree?
That goes without saying. This is really quite astounding.
For some reason, Diablo started showing off my creation to Gadra with a smug grin. They were both in awe and Gadra was getting visibly excited.
Xian.
Understood. Since they were quickly becoming a nuisance, I ordered Xian to isolate them in a separate room. Once I had peace and quiet again, I got down to business. The bird's eye view surveillance footage was a fantastic cheat. Think about it. Not long ago, I was worried about where we would be attacked from, but that couldn't be simpler now. After all, we were not just monitoring the possible routes for invasion but also our shared border with the Empire, so we'd know at the moment they started moving. Taking shogi as an example, it was like playing against a blindfolded opponent. That means your opponent could only be sure about the positions of their own pieces. Assuming you didn't act like a total amateur, this was your game to lose, even against a master of the game. This wasn't a minor handicap, but an absolute advantage. On top of that, there were no rules in this war. Victory was justice. The prospect of a one-sided invasion was scarier than I thought. As long as nothing had been promised, we could do anything in this war. However, I did set one rule: do not attack civilians. That was it. Of course, I strictly prohibited our side from striking first. Plus, once I declared that the war had ended, further attacks were forbidden. I believed that no one would disobey me and violate my orders. So now, all of the country's executives were gathered in the control room. Benimaru was the general. Hakuro was the advisor. Soe was the intelligence officer. Rigurd and the chiefs of the three powers that support him, Rugurd, Rigurd, Rogurd. Representing the women, we had Shuna and Lilina. There were also the unsung heroes, namely Rigor, Kaijin, and Karabe. Vesta and Muirmiles served as consultants. Gobta and Gabble served as the commanders of their corps. Even Geld laid down his work and came over. I also called the three demonesses led by Testarossa. Diablo seemed to have done some self-reflection, so I let him join the meeting too. He stood in his usual position, on good terms with Xian. Gadra and the trio also came to contribute their information about the Empire. And not to forget, Masayuki, now called the moral support of the people, of sorts, showed up late.
Wait a minute. Why am I the moral support of the people? Please don't say stuff like that. Come on.
He shouted, giving me some serious side-eye.
That's it for this video, guys. Thank you for always watching my videos and supporting my channel. Shout out to the new members of AnimeKouhai sponsors: Koala King 93, Devon, Tyree Ezel, Paul DeGrassi, Max Ariel, R.N. Bart, Little 95, Coyote de Peza, Enrique Soto, Omar. Thank you so much for helping out. I'll see you guys in the next video.